Hi everybody, I'm Zilla Blitz back at the US Supreme Court, and today we're going to continue our look at First Monday in October as we take a look at some gameplay on this new 1 to 4 player strategy game from Fort Circle Games and designed by Talia Rosen. Let's jump right in and get started. So we're looking at First Monday in October, and some gameplay has happened in this 3-player game, and what we're going to do in this video is kind of walk through just an entire turn showing some of the actions that players can take and some of the reasons why they might want to take them. Now, if you haven't seen the previous video where I kind of explained some of the foundational concepts of the game, I'll put a link to it in the top right-hand corner. I'd recommend checking that out because some of these actions might not make too much sense unless you've seen that video. But let's jump in now and kind of take a look at the game state and what's happened so far. And then we're going to think about what blue could do, and we're going to do some actions. Now, also, I want to show all of the actions, so I might do something that isn't necessarily the best strategy. Plus, I'm also very new at the game too, so I might even try to do the best strategy, and it might not be the best strategy. But I want to show most of the actions in the game, so with that in mind, we're going to jump in and take a look at the game state right now, and then talk about what blue might be thinking of doing. Now, the game has already progressed 2 turns, so this is the 3rd turn. We're still very early in the game. We're in the first era justices, as we can see this 1 over here, and these are all first era justice candidates. From the starting state, though, the philosophy of the court has shifted completely to an anti-federalist stance for all of these positions. So we can see up here, distant in the cases, the arrows are pointing to gold. So these bottom gold kind of anti-federalist sides on the cases will win if things stay the way they are. And one case has been judged, Brown versus USA. If we look at the blue players board, we can see they've gained this Brown versus USA card. They were on the winning side for that case, picking them up 5 big renown points, a big silver star for that one. They were the only player to have counsel on the winning side of the case, so they get 5 bonus points for that one. It was a landslide victory, which gave them 5 points. So now it's blue's turn, though, because they're going to start first on this turn, and the question is, what might they want to do? Now, again, blue has 6 different actions that they possibly could do. They do have counsel on the Gibbons versus Ogden's case, currently on the losing side of the case. And this is a commerce case. And if we look here at Thomas Johnson, the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice, we can see that his retirement factor will shift the commerce towards the Federalist stance, not by 1, but by 2, because he's the Chief Justice, so these are doubled. So if we could get him to retire, and if we look down here at the philosophy of the court right now, we can see that the philosophy on commerce is actually not too far away from shifting into the Federalist stance. And if we go back up to the cases here, this case is going to the Supreme Court in this turn. This is the next turn. This is actually still 3 turns from now. So there is enough time, really, for us to keep working on this. So in the sake of kind of making things a little bit interesting and showing the retirement action, we're going to see if blue's going to start out. Their first action will be, we're going to have them do a standard action, which is retirement, and it adds 1 aging marker to any justice on the bench, and then roll their retirement die. So let's see how that works. So Chief Justice Thomas Johnson already has 1 black retirement cube on him, but blue's going to add a second one, and now as part of that action we can roll to see if he's going to retire. His red die indicates a very short-term justice, which means you use the die roll that produces a 1 to 3 result, and if the number we roll is equal to or less than his aging cubes, Thomas Johnson retires. Let's see what we get. We get a 1. Thomas Johnson has retired. Blue's strategy has worked. So let's clear him off of the bench. And now we have to adjust the philosophy tracks in these directions. So it's a 1 for the commerce track, but Johnson was the Chief Justice, so it goes up by 2 because it's doubled. Likewise, the free speech track, it was way down here in the anti-federalist position. It's going to shift up 2 closer to the center. And now we can see that Blue's strategy of shifting the philosophy of the court into a more federalist commerce stance is close to working, and he has quite a bit more time to execute his plan because there's still going to be a couple more turns before we get to the judgment on the Gibbons versus Ogden case. So blue has finished their turn. Thomas Johnson has retired. So now it's orange's turn, and orange currently is the only player with a clerk on the currently prevailing side of Lyon versus USA. So it could strengthen its position here, but it might look for some other opportunities, and I think we see one created by the vacancy in the Chief Justice position and by this open spot here. Now, we could join on the Maryland side as well, but if we could jump up here, and the reason why kind of this is interesting is to place a clerk on the non-prevailing side costs less influence than it does to place a clerk on the prevailing side. And if there's nobody else there, it's even easier to place a clerk. So we could potentially place a clerk here very cheaply at the cost of influence. But the question would be, how could we shift this Federalist position, shift the executive branch position to a more Federalist level? And I think we have a potential answer if we look at our candidates for justice. Here are our 3 candidates to rise to the next Chief Justice. Noah Swain, who is a Federalist executive branch position of 2. James Wayne, likewise. Both of these guys will swing the philosophy of the court much higher up into favoring a Federalist position on executive stance. If we look at the current philosophy, we can see that a big shift, a shift of 4 or 6, would bring this way up into the Federalist position, which would put whichever player has clerks on the Federalist position of the McCulloch versus Maryland case in pretty good position to win that case. So let's do that. Orange is actually going to start its turn by spending influence to add 1 clerk to a case. So we're going to get the clerk out. Now, how much it costs here is actually very interesting. The cost of putting a clerk on is the number of the docket level. Let's take a look at that. The base cost to put clerks on a trial, it's only 0 if it's at discovery level, it's 1 if it's at the trial level, it's 2 if at the appeal level, and 4 at the Supreme Court level. So the base cost to put something on McCulloch versus Maryland here is 2. Additionally, it costs 2 if you're putting it on the prevailing side. We wouldn't be, because we want to put this clerk up here on the McCulloch side. So that's not going to cost any extra. And it's +1 more if there is co-counsel of another player there. There isn't. There's nobody here. So the cost to put this clerk on the McCulloch side of the case is a very affordable 2 influence, which is exactly what Orange has. It will spend those 2 influence, putting them back into the pool, add their clerk to the McCulloch case. That finishes Orange's turn. Purple's up. Purple has a lot of options here. It can kind of read the writing on the wall here, I think, for McCulloch versus Maryland, but there's some time to adjust that later. And there's not much really they can do about it at this level, except perhaps try to avoid one of those justices coming up to the bench, which might not be a bad strategy, but they have a different idea. And to do that, they're going to need a lot of influence. Right now, Purple has 5 influence. They have an idea for action they're going to take. They're going to need more influence for it. So they're going to do the take 4 influence action here. So they use one of their base actions. They're going to add 4 more influence to their pool here, which gives them 9. And they have moved and finished their turn. Blue's up again, and there's a lot of things that we could do. But for the sake of kind of showing a little bit of gameplay, I want to kind of call our attention to the robing room, which Blue advanced 2 spaces in the first 2 turns. And it gets the feature here, which is a rehearing. It means it may repeat actions. And this is available to the first player that gets there only until another player reaches the same level. Right now, Blue's the only player there. So instead of only doing 1 action, you can only do the action once in a turn, Blue can repeat. So let's double down on that aging strategy for Blue, and let's repeat the aging procedure. Here's the little robe indicator that Blue is holding on to that says may perform the same action 2 times in a room in a turn. We're going to add another aging marker to Justice Levi Woodbury. Now, Woodbury already has 2 aging markers. This gives him a 3rd aging marker, but we'll notice that Woodbury's aging marker is yellow. Yellow is actually an 8-sided die with only the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 on it. So we're going to roll for Woodbury. We need a 1, 2, or 3 to age him out of the game. We get a 1 to Woodbury. This doubles the impact of this actually because it removes the 2 clerks on the bench for Orange, which weakens them as well. So Woodbury is now out of the Supreme Court too. Woodbury's not a Supreme Court justice, but we still have to adjust the track. He's going to move Federalist 1 when he retires. So this actually shifts the stance of the court now just a little bit. And likewise on this track, the far right track, he shifts it 1 towards the Federalist position. And Levi Woodbury is now a retired Supreme Court justice. You'll notice that this shifted now. It went from an anti-federalist stance to federalist. So that means we come up here to Gibbons versus Ogden, and now we switch it. If this case were to reach the Supreme Court right now, blue would have successfully put a clerk on this side of the case and switched the decision of the case, giving them all of the renown points for this trial. But it's not at the Supreme Court decision level yet, so that's where it sits for now. That ends blue's turn. Orange wants to influence who's going to be the next Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, but it also is completely out of influence. So orange is going to do an action here to take 4 influence and get 4 more cubes here, because that will help it going forward. So it's going to do that. So that finishes orange's second turn. Purple's up. It has an idea what it can do here on the Lyon versus USA case, but it's going to save that for its final action. When it does kind of read the writing on the wall here for what's going to happen here. And there's a number of actions we can take to kind of try to keep this on the anti-federalist side. But I want to show one action. This is probably not the optimal move for purple, but I want to show how it works because it's an action we haven't seen yet. So one of the actions is to write a law review article, and this allows you to directly change the philosophy tracks. And it says adjust any judicial philosophy by 1 space. However, so purple's going to do that. There is a qualifier to this, however. Notice it explains it down in here, but you can adjust it by 1 more space on a regular action if you have more clerks on the bench than any other player. If we look at the 7 justices currently on the Supreme Court, we can see indeed that purple has 2 clerks, orange has 1, and blue has 1. So purple has more clerks than any other player on the bench, which means it can adjust the philosophical track by 2. So using its influence with the Supreme Court, we are going to shift the executive power track 2 spaces to the anti-federalist stance, strengthening its hold on the McCulloch versus Maryland case. Blue likewise has a lot of options on things it can do. It hasn't added any clerks to any cases yet, but it does have this winning position now on Gibbons versus Ogden, and it could try to defend this position because if it looks down here at the robing room, we can see right now that for these open spaces on the bench, right now Philip Barber is going to rise up and he would be the Supreme Justice, the Chief Justice, because he's got the most clerks on him right now. And that would be gold 2, which would hurt blue's position on the Gibbons versus Ogden trial. So to try to keep Philip Barber off the Supreme Court, blue is going to come up and blue's going to come up here and do a supreme action, which is its last action left, of adding 2 clerks to a candidate. Now blue could also consider the philosophy goals here. This Catholic diocese one that it could pick has both silver for commerce and then gold for free speech, which actually makes James Wayne a somewhat helpful candidate for Chief Justice, because not only would he negate Philip Barber from coming up, he would help swing that track for free speech further to the gold, to the anti-federalist position. So for the lack of really thinking through things overly detail, blue is going to support the rise of James Wayne to the Supreme Court. Orange is looking pretty good here. It's leading right now in this case that's going to go to decision right away without any competition for it. And if they can influence the next Supreme Court Chief Justice, this could swing in their favor too. So let's nudge that along for Orange. They're going to do the same supreme action, which is to add 2 clerks to a candidate, because they're using their supreme action. So Orange is going to add its 2 clerks to Noah Swain. This will force Noah Swain to be the Chief Justice. It's a little bit of a decreased impact because this would be doubled and it's not going to be, but still it's going to add 7 position swings to the executive power philosophy track in the favor of Orange for that McCulloch versus Maryland case. So we'll try that. And now let's go to Purple's final action. Purple can do a lot of things. Purple could do the Supreme Court action to counter them all and get Philip Barber to rise up to the Chief Justice. But for the sake of showing something different, we're going to have Purple do a different supreme action. Purple's going to take its Supreme Court action to add 2 clerks to a case instead. And it's got to do that, it has to spend a renown point. So we're going to take one of these renown points away from Purple and put it back in the pool. We're grabbing 2 clerks and we're going to figure out how much influence it's going to cost to do this, but Purple has a plan to foil Orange at the newest and most recent case. So we know right now, as this case goes to the Supreme Court, that the USA is going to win, and the orange player will get some renown for winning this case. But with the supreme action, purple's going to spend influence to add 2 clerks to the USA case, giving it a winning position in this case. So how much is it going to cost? It costs 4 to get in the case this late. It's going to cost 2 more to be on the prevailing side. It's going to cost 1 more because there's co-counsel there, and a supreme action costs 2 additional ones. So a massive 9 influence. Purple jumps on USA with 2 clerks and exhausts all its influence. But now we'll see what happens here as the case goes to the Supreme Court. At this point in time, the action phase of the turn is over, and we go to the adjudication phase. Let's see what happens. Now, the first thing we do is we have to fill vacancies on the bench. You have a maximum of 2 filled each turn. So how do we determine who becomes the next Supreme Court justices? We look at the candidate pool. So this is how you basically determine who's going to be the next justices. It's the one with the most clerks on them. Right now, Noah Swain and James Wayne are tied with 2 apiece. The person in the higher position has the strongest position, so Noah Swain is the strongest candidate. And because of that, they are going to come up and become the Chief Justice. So we drop Noah Swain in the Chief Justice position, and we influence these tracks immediately. And we know the Chief Justice influence is doubled. So we are going to go 4 for executive power. 1, 2, 3, 4, which is a doubling of the 2 executive power, goes towards the Federalist position. Likewise, the equality and liberty track is also going to go 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So into the Federalist position. James Wayne is the next justice to fill that second vacancy because he has a stronger position than Philip Barber. So James Wayne drops into position number 1 here, and we're going to adjust the executive track by 3 and the free speech track by 1 the other direction. Executive power 1, 2, 3 shifted towards the Federalist position, and free speech shifts 1 down here. Let's now shift the case judgments. Both McCulloch versus Maryland and Madison versus Marbury shift their positions here from gold up to silver as we see the shifting philosophies of the court. And this time, in this turn alone, all of the court positions except for the free speech one have shifted from anti-federalist to a federalist position. Now, we are not quite done. The weakest candidate is eliminated. So Philip Barber has to head home, and we lose, purple loses that clerk, and then we replenish the pool here. So we're going to put up 3 new candidates for the next turn. Next, we come to the appeals phase, which shifts all of the court cases 1 to the right. So we're going to move Lyon versus the USA here, McCulloch versus Maryland here. I'll do the others. Lastly, we're going to add a new case to the discovery phase, Cooley versus Board of Warrens. And we will add the marker on that one momentarily. Now it is time to decide. Free speech case, Lyon versus USA, is ruled in favor of the USA. It is in the gold position. If we look down on the philosophy track, we can see that it's not in one of the 3 extreme positions. That means the winning side is going to get 3 renown points. So purple gets 3 renown points. We'll take those off and we'll add those to the purple player's space. Second place player, if there's a clear second place, gets 1 renown point. So orange gets 1 for that judgment. The clerks go back into the players' pools, and I'm going to distribute those points to each player. One of the other things that happens after the case is adjudicated is that if you have clerks on the winning side of the case, you can expend and extinguish a clerk from one of your justices on the bench to gain an extra renown point. This is called writing an opinion, but you have to have the justice has to have this symbol either way, either silver or gold, the color doesn't matter, on them. And well, Livingston here has that symbol. There's no clerks there. Daniel was purple. Purple is on the case, but it's not a free speech clerk. And likewise, if we go through all of these justices where orange and purple have clerks, there's not a single justice that is influential in free speech. So no side has a chance to write opinions here, but that normally would be, that's a little bit unusual in this case. So no opinions on this case, so no extra renown points options for the players that were on that. We do have one last thing to do. If we look at the case here, it says robing room +1. That means that all players move up in the robing room.
So let's see what that happens. We didn't see any side take that action during the turn. We're going to start with the first player in the certiorari pool here. Draw 3 and discard 1, which means you can take 3 cards off the top of either the Justice's deck or the Case Law deck, discard 1 from the game, put the other 2 back in any order you want to. Let's take a look at what this was going to mean, and blue goes first. If we look quickly here, however, we are now into the second era of the cases. This is E2 up here on the cases, and the justices are on justices level 1. What this means is at the end of the turn, we're going to balance these. Whenever these are out of a line, you throw away, get out of the game, all of the earlier ones that haven't been brought into the game yet. So all of the level 1 justices are going to be removed from the game anyway. So blue is going to take a look at the 3 cases in era 2, pick the one that it definitely doesn't think it wants, throw that one away, and then put the other 2 back in any order it wants. Not really sure what the strategy here would be for this one, but we do have 2 freedom of speech cases, and blue's already won one of those. So I think what we're going to do is just get rid of one of them. It's going to get rid of Rosen versus the USA. We'll toss that one out, and then we're going to put in the Hammer versus Dagenhart case up first and reorder the deck. So that's going to come up next in the next round. Both orange and purple move up to the next stage. This is the rehearing stage, and now that there's been a second player get to this second level, blue loses their special ability to repeat actions because it's not unique. So this is now out of the game, and it goes back into the pile of the little robe markers there. The last thing we do is we take the case and we give this to purple because it's won that case. Next, we are going to age our Supreme Court justices. There are 2 parts to this. One is an ancient aging, and that means we look to see if any of the justices are 2 eras apart. So we have starting era justices, we have level 1 justices, we have no justices from level 2, so the ancient aging doesn't apply. Basically, we'd be adding some aging dice to some of those ancient starting judges, but that hasn't kicked in yet. However, what we do want to do now is natural aging, and to do that we're going to roll 3 black 10-sided dice and apply an aging marker to each one of the justices that they fall on. So I'm going to roll those dice. We get a 0, a 1, and a 6. The 0 applies to no position because there is no 0 position on the court and you do not re-roll it. The 1 and the 6, however, do apply. So we're going to apply an aging die to James Wayne, who just came up to the bench here, but he is below his 4 marker, so that doesn't matter. And then Alfred Moore gets an aging marker as well. If any of these had equaled the total possible of this die, this justice would be retired. But that's it for right now. There's no impact of that. So if Moore had 1 more, he would have 4 and we would retire him from the game. But that's not the case, so no justices retire. The next step in the end turn phase is to adjust the track here. If any one of these markers is in the very extreme edge of the board, we bring everything back to its central positions by 1, but that's not the case. There is no extreme position in the philosophy of the court right now. We do also want to make sure we set the marker for the new case that comes up, Cooley versus Board of Wardens. The Commerce is currently on the Federalist track, pointing towards the Federalist track, so we drop it there. The next thing we check for is a new era. If these are different, then we remove all the lower ones. Indeed, Era 2 cases, Era 1 justices. We're going to remove all of the Era 1 justices from the game. There were 3 of them there. They will never appear. They are gone, and we now have the Era alignment, and we slide into Era 2. The other thing that has to happen now is because we're in a new era going into the second era, every player has to discard one of their philosophy cards. I'm not going to do this for all 3 of the players, but I'm going to do it for blue. Blue has Catholic Dioceses right now, which is kind of a very strong position. All 3 of these are true. The Federalist position, Anti-Federalist position. So it wants to keep this one. And the other one that's fair, probably this one doesn't matter. This one's better because these 2 are right. This one is right, wrong, wrong. So it's going to get rid of natural law theorists and keep these 2 for the moment. Probably leaning into this one as it would get all of the points from that one because all 3 of those are correct cases at this point in time. Now I'm going to do likewise for the other 2 players, but I'm not going to show those on camera. And with that, we've seen an entire turn. We've seen the action phase, and now we've just ended the adjudication phase. We've also seen the end of an era. Gameplay would continue on into the second era with the switch of the first player going to orange as we're going around in clockwise value. I'm going to add an impressions video, my thoughts on gameplay so far. I've played a 4-player game and I've played this 3-handed solo a couple times. So I'm going to add an impressions video. Once that's ready, I'll put a link to it right here. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great day.